everyone, my name is Melanie Standish and I am the Program Manager for the National Center for Healthcare Leadership Excellence Networks. On behalf of the National Center for Healthcare Leadership, I'd like to welcome you to the first coffee chat of 2022. These are bi-monthly conversations around important topics in the healthcare industry. And today I'm delighted to tell you all about NCHL's Best Organizations for Leadership Development program. One thing that I do want to mention is that the beginning of this coffee chat recording is going to be a re-record because we did not record the beginning of the coffee chat that occurred on January 20th. And the end of the recording does exist, so I will be stitching that in with my conversation with Jill Carter at Intermountain Healthcare. That said, I did want to give a quick shout out to Susan O'Hare from Gallagher. Gallagher is the partnering organization for the Best Organizations for Leadership Development program this year. And she is the area president for Gallagher's Executive Search and Leadership Advisors function. With that said, I would like to give a little bit of a presentation about what BOLD is. That's the acronym for Best Organizations for Leadership Development, and talk about the process and why your hospitals and health systems should participate this year. So I'll give an overview of what BOLD is, what to expect from the BOLD survey, and then we're going to hear a bit from Jill Carter from Intermountain about their practices within leadership development and what made Intermountain Healthcare a BOLD award winner in 2020. So what is BOLD? Well, BOLD is a benchmarking process for hospitals and health systems who wish to advance their evidence-based practices within their hospitals and health systems. It runs every 2 years, and top participants who complete a survey receive recognition as a BOLD Award winner, which again is why we're talking to Intermountain Healthcare today about their leadership development processes. But I do want to ask, why BOLD? As you can see here, we have lots of headlines about things that are going on right now in the world. We have toxic culture driving the Great Resignation. COVID will continue to see the nursing shortage that's occurring. Many people are quitting. There's a need and a call for racial justice. All of that said, leadership development processes are more important than ever because this is what's going on right now. Imagine what's going to be going on in 10 or 15 years. One of the things that I read earlier today was an HBR article from Mark Harrison, the CEO of Intermountain Healthcare. And he highlighted 5 priorities of leaders moving forward coming out of the pandemic. And that's going to be focusing on improving health and prevention, tackling racial disparities, expanding telehealth and home services, building integrated systems, and adopting value-based care. So these are the things that our leaders may need to prepare for the future, in addition to whatever may come our way in healthcare. And with that said, evidence-based practices in leadership development are going to give us a way to properly develop leaders for the future, so they're not just prepared for the challenges that they're facing right now, but the challenges of tomorrow, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, etc. So what our BOLD process does is allow people to benchmark their processes against each other and against the evidence base. Evidence-based practices are important because those are going to be the practices that ensure the longevity of our leadership development systems and that they're doing what they're supposed to. So what does this process look like? Well, every 2 years, NCHL reviews the evidence base around leadership development practices and what works best in leadership development. We take a look at the literature, what's going on in academics, and then we bring together a panel of experts to talk about what the trends have been since 2 years ago. Our last iteration was in 2020. The survey will also be updated to reflect emerging practices. These are often not scored towards the final BOLD award, but these do allow NCHL to capture things that might be emerging trends within healthcare. We often know that practice can really be ahead of the research sometimes. So these are things that we want to keep our eye on for future iterations of the survey that might be building evidence as we approach the next couple of years. And ultimately, the revised questions are sent to all interested health systems. There's about 100 questions in the survey, so it is quite a lengthy survey. And I'll talk in a little bit about some tips that Intermountain has provided to me about their experience with the survey, and talk about what your health system can do to prepare for the survey. But first, I do want to mention the BOLD dimensions. So there are 12 dimensions in the survey, each containing their own questions. You can think about this survey that each of these dimensions has a series of questions related to them. They're going to be related to the topic, and they're also going to be scored on a presence or absence. So a good example of this is if you are doing the providing developmental experiences category, you're going to be asked about things like, What do you do for your leadership academies if you have any, job rotations, action learning programs? And if you are engaging in these evidence-based activities, you receive a score on the basis of having them. One of the categories that I would like to specifically point out is the well-being category, which was new for 2020. And this is really reflecting the extent to which an organization's leadership systematically supports the health and well-being of its employees. I'll mention here some recent research that came out, and we all know, as we're seeing with COVID-19, that the well-being currently is imperative to continue to push healthcare forward because we are not taking good care of our caregivers. And what Tate Shanafelt recently found in the well-being literature is that we're trying to shift from well-being 1.0 to well-being 2.0. And what that looks like is going from a focus on individual well-being to looking at how the system can support well-being. And that's exactly what this dimension of the survey looks at. And that's why we added it in 2020, was this increased recognition that we need to be focusing on well-being from a leadership level and standpoint. The other thing I'll mention while the dimensions are up on the screen is just that this survey does more than just capture leadership development practices, but captures the system of leadership as a whole and the practices that influence leadership development from that level. So what you're looking at is not just the practices and the leadership academies that you're using, that's part of the survey, but you're also looking at how are organizations attracting and selecting their leaders? What does succession planning look like? And how are you measuring all of these different things? So when we talk about measuring and benchmarking leadership development practices, it isn't just about the programs that you put in place, but the overall leadership development process that you use as a whole within your organizations. What are the logistics of this? Well, the survey is expected to launch at the beginning of June 2022. We typically give organizations about a month to complete the survey through the end of the month. And participation is no cost to organizations who want to partake, and thanks to the support that we're receiving from Gallagher, our partnering organization this year. We typically give out benchmarking scorecards around August or September timeframe, so you're able to take a look at the scorecard and benchmark your best practices against other organizations. And then awardees who win an award are going to be notified in August. And what's really great about this award process is that we actually present the awards live at NCHL's annual conference. We currently don't know the dates of the conference, but it is typically held in November. All of that to say, an amazing process that we highly encourage hospitals and health systems to take part in, especially since it's no cost to your organization. I'll also highlight this very small image of the scorecard on the screen here. This is what the scorecard is going to look like that you receive. You'll see the different dimensions and your ranking in each of the dimensions out of all of the organizations that have participated. And then you'll also see like what the highest score is, what the median score is, what your score is in terms of points. So you're able to take a look at your rank and understand the different areas in which you might need to improve, and hopefully apply for future iterations of BOLD and potentially get into one of the awardee categories. All of that said, if you would like to complete the BOLD survey, there is a link on the screen here, or you could scan the QR code that you also see. Since we didn't get the first part of the recording with Jill, some things that I'll mention about Intermountain Healthcare's approach to actually completing the survey. Some of the things that she mentioned are actually being able to go throughout your organization and get the information that you need from the source. So what this means is that it really takes a village to complete the survey. When you receive the link in June, you're going to want to take a look at the questions right away so that you are able to go about and ask the correct people for the answers. A good example of this is that there is a dimension called providing developmental experiences. This might be something that your director of leadership development would know, but the leadership development and well-being category, on the other hand, might be sitting in a different house of your organization. So you're going to want to prepare for those different dimensions because they may sit in different places within your organization. So again, in Jill's words, it really takes a village to complete the survey. Give yourselves enough time to complete the survey, be consistent with your answers, and give the most accurate data as possible by going to the source of who knows the information the best. And that's really going to drive this process and really make a successful BOLD application for everyone. And it's also going to give the most accurate benchmarking data for when we go and compare everyone in the data set. All of that to say, I'm now going to turn it over to Jill Carter, who is from Intermountain Healthcare, And I'm going to ask her some questions about their leadership development processes and really what made them stand out as a Bold Award winner in 2022. That said, I would love to hear more just about your programs and what make them stand out. You were stand out on a variety of dimensions in 2020 as Intermountain Healthcare, and I would love to hear just what you think really makes your leadership programs great and just more about those practices you'd like to share.
Sure. In preparing for today, I've chosen 3 areas that I feel like are strengths at Intermountain to share with you and to share with everybody listening. And the first one would be clinical leadership development. And I wanted to chat with you a little bit about that. We have a program called Principles of Leadership. It was launched in January of 2021. And what it began as was a new leader program. And when we launched this in 2021, we thought, well, we're going to be lucky, especially during COVID, with being in healthcare industry, to get 300 applicants. Throughout the year, we had over 600 applicants apply and get into the program. Actually, there's not an application. It is expected that our new clinicians, as well as our non-clinicians, go through this. And we have 3 different tracks for it. The first track is really the nursing pathway. It includes courses, it includes assessments, 360s, as well as individual assessments and practical application. It's a 12-month course. We have a medical leader pathway, the same courses, assessments, 12-month course. And then we also have a general leader pathway, the same thing. Now, each of the pathways have the same tree trunk, if you will, but branch out depending on their areas of expertise. Today, so approximately 1 year and a half a month after launch, we have over 675 applicants on one of those 3 different pathways. And we've also seen an increase in succession planning, as well as an increase in our engagement scores, a great increase as a result of this. And we're finding that our legacy leaders, not just our new leaders, are saying, gee, we wish we would have had this. Can we be on this pathway? And that's why we have over 675 leaders on this pathway. So that's one particular example of basically clinical leadership development. I wanted to share another one. A large portion of our workforce is made up of our nurses and our nurse leaders. And there is a program that I think is just fabulous. It is called Empower and Lead for nurse leaders. We offer this monthly, and this is done through our nursing area at Intermountain, although our team also sits on the committee for development and supports it. And we have monthly topics for those nurse leaders, including right now, self-compassion, well-being, our Intermountain leadership behaviors, mindfulness, coaching, communication, how to deliver difficult messages. And we have, on the monthly sessions, they're just lunch and learns really for about 50-55 minutes. We have between 300 and 500 nurses attend those once a month. Now, those are nurse leaders, but it has been a tremendous success for our nurses here at Intermountain. Another area that I thought might be of interest, of course, given our current circumstances throughout the world, is leadership and well-being. And this morning, bright and early, our CEO, Dr. Mark Harrison, gave a kind of an update. And I noticed that in the 45 minutes that he was answering questions and giving us kind of this state of the union for Intermountain, if you will, his focus was primarily on well-being. It is not an easy time right now, particularly for our leaders and our caregivers who work on the front lines in our hospitals and in our clinics. So some of the things that Intermountain has done, and it is It's an honor to be a part of and associated with an organization that cares so deeply about the well-being of its workforce. Some of these things would be taking a look at, of course, staffing and increasing our staffing where we need to, particularly on those front lines. And everyone contributes. One of the things Dr. Harrison was talking about today was that supervisors, managers, directors in our labs, because of the testing going on, were lending a hand, working shoulder to shoulder to try to meet the demand out there. We also have a COVID-19 employee health hotline so that you can call, get questions answered. We have leaves of absence due to COVID exposure. We have COVID pay for individuals who contact COVID and to help them bridge that gap while they're off getting well. We have an employee assistance program. We have something that I thought would be interesting called a rounding guide, which are questions to ask and signals to be aware of as leaders, as our nurse leaders round for caregivers to detect and identify stress and burnout. We have something called a caregiver going home checklist, which is 5 steps to ease your transition from work to home. We have online guided meditation and mindfulness classes, a peer support program, which really amounts to training and resources to better enable our caregivers to take care of their colleagues and their fellow caregivers. We have appreciation meals and snack carts. We even have massage therapy services. We have something that I've been honored to be associated with, which is a caregiver assistance fund for caregivers who may need help with day-to-day needs like housing, utilities, food, transportation. And we have physician wellness coaching. We also take a look at our wages and make sure that we are paying attractive and competitive wages to be able to reward and compensate our caregivers for the hard work that they put in. There are many other well-being kinds of opportunities that Intermountain offers. You know, in listening to our CEO this morning, he also mentioned, and this of course occurred as well, money for individuals to have a Christmas dinner who can't afford to do so, even within our own workforce. Lots of things going on within the organization to help take care of our caregivers. And then the third area that I thought I'd just touch on, Melanie, is incorporating administrative fellowships. This has been wonderful. And in fact, I have one of our administrative fellows co-presenting with me on the 28th of January, and he is delighted to work on our leadership behaviors with me. So Intermountain offers a competitive postgraduate administrative fellowship program, basically to select graduates from accredited master's programs in the following areas: healthcare administration, business administration with an emphasis in healthcare, an MBA or an MPH in public health. The objective of the fellowship program really is to cultivate a philosophy, a code of ethics, and a set of values in a company dedicated to excellence in patient care and healthcare administration. We work hard at developing leadership skills, and as part of the leadership and organizational development team, it's an honor when we have a fellow that we get to work with and utilize their skill sets too, and the knowledge and the expertise that they bring from the outside into Intermountain. We help them acquire marketable administrative and technical skills. We demonstrate management potential in a variety of areas at various levels, and they are on a rotational basis. Although when they work in leadership and org development, they stay with me for a year, which I love. I love having them there for that amount of time. It's been super successful, that particular program, and not only has the fellow benefited, but we have benefited significantly from that. So those are 3 areas that I thought perhaps would be of interest to our listeners today, and that I could share with you.
Thank you so much. And one thing I'll add is that NCHL is uniquely interested in administrative fellowships because of our National Council on Administrative Fellowships. And I'll put in a plug. I wasn't expecting to do this, but I believe we have a webinar after this one today on the National Council for Administrative Fellowships. So if you are interested in getting involved with that, or you'd like to form an administrative fellowship program, NCHL is the perfect place to do that as well. So thank you for supporting young leaders like that, Jill, at Intermountain. That's really exciting.
Absolutely. And I wanted also to mention, Melanie, that we're constantly improving too. Our data helps us see where we need to improve. And so I don't know whether or not you want to ask this question, but I thought I'd share with you what's on the horizon for Intermountain Healthcare in the future. And of course, one of the pieces, I have a huge passion for diversity, equity, and inclusion. So we will continue to expand our DEI leadership development opportunities for our caregivers within our organization. There is basically a rebuild of talent acquisition as well, huge because of the environment that we're working in. And then finally, a very cool partnership called a Crossroads program with Northwell Health in New York to cross-train our senior leaders. And all three of those we're knee deep into them at this point, maybe even neck deep, and it's been a wonderful experience on all fronts.
I just have to say, with the program with Northwell, I've heard a little bit about the beginning formations of that program, and Northwell and Intermountain are both members of NCHL's Leadership Excellence Networks, and it's just seeing that come together and the collaboration and the job rotations. I can't wait to hear more about it. I'm sure you and your team will be presenting it elsewhere, but everyone be on the lookout because it's really one of a kind. I've never seen anything like it before. Excellent. Well, the other thing I wanted to mention just about Intermountain's culture in general too, before we finish here with the Q&A, is I know you recently redid your competencies, and one of my favorites, I think, is mission obsessed. Can you comment on that briefly? I think it's just such a great competency that our audience should know about.
Sure. Yes. In fact, I would like to share with you the context of all four. We have 4 leadership behaviors. It's an interesting journey that we took. We assessed within the organization all of the leadership behaviors that our leaders were asked to do. We found over 300. We chuckled at that and said, okay, let's simplify. So we boiled it down to 4. The first one is mission obsessed. The second one is empower others to act. Act with courage is the third one. And the final one is driving results. So going back to mission obsessed, it has what we call 3 core strengths. The first one is a relentless focus on the mission and vision and values of our organization. And of course, that boils down to helping people live the healthiest lives possible, not only in our community, but within our own workforce. And it also includes a huge emphasis on diversity, equity, and inclusion at all levels throughout the organization. And of course, that takes a village, and there are many pockets in organization within Intermountain working on that particular piece. And the third piece on mission obsessed is a focus on the future and being having an eye looking out the windshield rather than out the back seat window, so to speak, and really having an eye on the future and making sure that we're building the systems, processes, and developing our caregivers for sustainability and a really strong, innovative, creative organization of the future.
Thank you. I know I put you on the spot for that one, but I think it really drives home what a great representative Intermountain Healthcare is for the BOLD Award, is this idea that your culture is driven throughout the organization, and this mission obsessed competency is just fascinating to me. So I really appreciate you sharing. With that said, I did want to open it up for questions. So if anyone from our audience has questions for myself about the BOLD program, Susan and Gallagher, our partnering organization, or Jill at Intermountain, we would love to take them. And let me look at the chat here. Oh, the one thing I'll mention is I did talk about the NCAF thing today, the presentation on that. You can find information on how to register for that on LinkedIn. So NCHL's LinkedIn page has more information. And I was correct, it is after this event. So at 11 Central Time and noon Eastern Time, you can join and learn more about that program. Let's see if we have any other questions. I don't see any just yet, but as I do with my students, I'll wait and see if anyone has any questions before we close. Jill, anything else that you would like to add as we close out?
Just that one of the effects of the Bold Award has really encouraged us to even be better. And I say that because it's a learning process as you begin to gather the data and complete the application. You learn even more about your organization. And that's one thing that I think is super important. And because of that, it does, going back to your point about being mission obsessed, it does keep an eye on the future and what you need to do to strengthen the organization going forward.
Excellent, great points, and we love to hear that. I did get a question from the audience on when the survey closes. We typically start at the beginning of June and close at the end of June, so around June 30th, but those dates will be announced later for everyone as well. And if you email info@nchl.org, we can send you a copy of the questions so that you can prepare, with the caveat that some of them will change for 2022 as we revise the survey. So just something to think about. And then the last thing I wanted to make sure that I do is actually reshare the slide with how to sign up and the QR code. So let's see, give me a second here.
And Melanie, while you're doing that, there's a question in the chat for me about how many participants are in the clinical leadership programs. So it's a rotation, if you will. And what I mean by that is, as a new leader comes into the program, they are automatically enrolled into the program. So we literally have 675 individuals, but it is also partly self-led and partly class-driven and partly applied. So it isn't run by cohorts. They enter in and then they work through it as time permits for them over that 12-month period. So I'm hoping that makes sense. It's a rolling entry.
Thank you, Jill. Just to address the questions before I close out here, someone asked if there's any way that awardees are recognized other than our NCHL website. Currently, that's where they are listed. I know that Becker's put out an announcement in 2020 on who the Bold Award winners are. And then, like I said, we also recognize them at our annual conference. So be on the lookout for more information around that. And then if you're interested, again, if you're interested in the link for the NCAF meeting occurring afterwards, you could still sign up. Go to our NCHL's LinkedIn page. I know there's going to be a link there. Oh, and then we also, someone just posted it here. Perfect. So we should be all set to go. That said, I would like to close out our time here because we're at the end of our half hour. It always goes so quickly. I would like to thank Jill for participating today. And Susan, thank you for kicking this off. And thank you to Gallagher for partnering with us this year.
Thank you. We're excited to do that.
Excellent. Well, have a good one, everyone.
Bye-bye, everyone.